This is my second time in Mozambique, and somebody asked me this morning, do you like our country? And my answer is yes, because here I feel at home. You go to some places and you feel threatened, but I don't feel that way here. I feel very much at home, and I greet everybody and say good morning. And I'm delighted to be at this conference organized by INED. I want to say thank you to the Deputy Director, Vice Minister of Education, Dr. Ida Hugo. And I was very happy when she told me this morning that she also was a student of the University of Pretoria. That really gave me joy. So I'm not going to talk about something that is unknown. I'm going to talk about something that I know, and I know she will be able to say it is so. And I can even recognize somebody who was also an old student of the university, and I greet him from afar. I also recognize the presence of the head of Board of Governors, Mr. Chirine. I met him this morning, and I listened to the passion with which he spoke about open distance learning, which made me very happy. I acknowledge the presence of the members of the Consultative Council of the Minister of Education. And at the same time, I thank the Director of INED, Mr. Frank, who I always refer to as a very senior colleague. Maybe I was still in my years when he was studying. But I thank him for the invitation. I recognize Nakala, Ms. Nakala. I see her as the face of all members of staff at the INED, and I say thank you for inviting me to this program. It is nice, always nice working with us. To do my presentation, I'm going to stand up. I'm not used to sitting down. I'm a teacher to the core, and I like looking into my student faces, so I would like to see everybody's faces. I hope I'm permitted. The topic that I'm looking at today is sharing ODL experiences, expanding access, and ensuring quality education in Mozambique. I just want to give a brief outline of what we're going to do together within the time that I have. I want to look at the context of education, especially in Africa, because we share similar experiences. And at the same time, I will look at the relevance of education to our context. Why do we talk about education so much? I will also look at the access and quality issues in open distance learning. I have there a map of Africa, and I said we share similar experiences. We have similar challenges. If we look at neocolonialism, famine, war, irreversible environmental damage, and the scourge of HIV and AIDS, which has, those things have really affected our society. And again, there is the aspect of the religious aspect that if we don't handle very carefully, they will also impact on our society. Now, if we look at education, there is no way to talk about development that education is not involved. There is a relationship. And therefore, Africa is going to do well to develop educated, skilled, and competent populace. I know that there are various arguments about the relationship between education and development, which is beyond the scope of this particular presentation. But one thing that I know very well is that nobody can dispute the fact that it takes an educated populace or an educated individual to be able to function very well in the present day society. I cannot imagine maybe an old professor at the university deciding to sit in his former position maybe of 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It is not possible. What we are saying is that an educated populace leads to a developed society, and that education is the bedrock of development. The picture that I have on that slide shows education as being at the foundation, and that when we educate our society, it has economic benefits. There is the social well-being. There is democratic society. I listened to the Vice Minister of Education talking about the percentage of women that have been educated or that are involved in open distance learning. And the truth is that I believe what people have said, that when we educate a woman, we educate a whole nation. Because an educated woman will look after her children properly. An educated woman will send our children to school, and so many other advantages that are involved when we educate the society. So for anybody to contribute meaningfully to the present-day society, the person needs to be educated. Now, when we talk about education of the society, open distance learning, whether we like it or not, has become the solution to the challenges that we have. Through open distance learning, there is no more barrier to learning. Technology is helping us. You will discover that in open distance learning, there is no barrier to age, there is no age limitation. We could use open distance learning even at the primary school, at the secondary school, at the tertiary education. In other words, what we are saying is open distance learning helps to bridge the gap between people in the society, and we could organize so many aspects of this. The truth again that can be verified, and I'm going to show some statistics to prove that, is that contact education can no longer cope with the escalating demand for education. This is a table showing the challenge that we have. I'm a Nigerian, even though I work in South Africa, showing the challenge that one of the countries in Africa has when it comes to education. And this is also applicable to many African countries. Many cannot take care of their populace. Let's see what we have there. In 1988-99, Nigeria had a total of 39 universities. The application that came in, 537,226, only 64,000 were absorbed into the university system, that is the contact education program. We could take a look at the total number of applicants that were turned away. For over 400,000 students could not be absorbed. So the question is going to be, where is social justice in the society? And we're talking about students who are qualified to attend university education. The same applies if you go through this table till 2006, 2007. Even though the number of universities keeps increasing, it doesn't bring a solution to the challenge that we have in education. And this is a very pathetic state. I know very well that this is the experience that we also have here. And that will now bring us into what we call ODL's iron triangle. We talk about access, because that is the essence of ODL. We talk about quality, and we talk about cost. It is very good to give access to students, but there are so many questions to be asked. And I have there are pictures. Number one, there is, I could liken that to the picture of the past with some things inside. Those things the person may be opened, and I know I have many women in the house who can verify to so many goodies that we have in our purse. It could be your makeup purse, it could be full of money, it could be anything. But the truth is, we may open that purse just to attract people to what is inside. But the fact is still going to remain that if we refuse to bring out the goodies, that purse will just remain there and the content will be locked inside. I have another picture there of a Father's Day. I love that picture because of the tie and the shirt of a man there. But we can see, even though they are goodie bags, if we don't open them up, nobody can enjoy what we have inside. So open distance learning, yes, it opens access, but the question is going to remain, how open is the access? And I want to agree with somebody, with what somebody said. This idea was first mooted by Morrow and later developed by Muller. And in this particular study, there was a differentiation made between physical access and epistemological access. When we talk about physical access, it is the formal access which can be achieved by maybe going into diverse forms of admission policies of the university, because we want to bring more students in, we want to educate more people. So we open up the access. And at that particular point, what we give to the applicant will be the physical access, and that is where it ends. But the truth is that in cases where access has been opened up, in most cases, there is a problem with the epistemological access. Epistemological access in this instance refers to the goodies of education. For instance, if we open up access to education to people, the question is going to be, what kind of support do we give to them? Somebody once said, and I agree with that it is highly immoral to admit students into a system without supporting them to finish, especially when they have the potential to do so. I'm a product of distance education at the first degree level, and if I could have come to this level, I believe that there are so many students outside there who can succeed if they are given the opportunity and the necessary support. So we can open up access, but how well are we supporting them? One of the areas that the government can look into will be the area of making aid, financial aid, accessible to students. We want to look at the support systems that we have put in place to see our students through. We want to consider the library facilities. We want to talk about the counseling services. All those things will come under the epistemological access. And that was why I showed the picture of the goodies bag. Yes, the bags are full of goodies, but if we don't make them accessible, there is going to be a problem. So in other words, what we are saying is physical access good, but epistemological access goes to define the quality of the access that we have given to students. And this is just a funny picture of somebody who said, I have found a substitute for quality. Because I am talking to open distance learning specialists in the house this morning. Please, may I tell everybody seated here, there is no substitute for quality. What are the challenges? What are the challenges that ODL is facing? And I'm talking about something universal, especially in the African context. There is the poor perception of ODL quality. When I finished my master's, I looked at 3 institutions in Nigeria, ODL institutions in Nigeria. I did a kind of comparative analysis. So when I was to do my PhD, the question was asked, did I raise any question? Was there anything that would be of interest to me? And I said yes, I would like to probe what is the quality of distance education in comparison to contact education. So there is, why? Because there is this perception that if a student has or has studied through ODL, then the quality of that certificate is low, which I don't agree with, and I'm going to show you some things to that effect. At the same time, because of that perception, ODL is under serious pressure to produce results. So we expect to have better standards than we have in contact education. Unfortunately, the same quality criteria that is used in our contact education mode is being used for distance education in many countries, which should not be so. They are not the same because the processes differ. Again, another challenge that we are faced with as ODL ODL practitioners is low throughput rate, which is a very big challenge, even though there are so many questions to be asked under that. People talk about low throughput rate, but they need to look into why do we have high low throughput rate in distance education. Do we consider the adults that are involved? Why would an adult drop out? Do we consider, for instance, if an adult, a woman involved in ODL happens to be pregnant and needs to put to bed, and she, leaves the system for a while and comes back there, do we consider all those things? They are very important. And the reason for this is because there is a lack of understanding about the nature of ODL. At the same time, there is lack of information on the nature. And at the same time, ODL is seated with students from contact education mode who know very little about how to go about their studies. These are some of the challenges that we have. Now, because of these challenges that we have, there is a quality gap in distance education. Yes, we can educate more people, but there will always be tension between the need to expand our educational system and the lower unit costs, procedures for assessing quality, and we can see that because these things are being put in different directions, there is a serious tension that is involved. So the question is going to be, what is quality? And because I'm speaking to practitioners here, even to the lowest level, you will all agree with me that it is very difficult to define quality. Somebody said it is slippery in nature because what quality means to you, it may not really mean to me. And again, we can look at the popular definitions. What I'm trying to say this morning is, even if there is no consensus on what quality is all about, but we all have an idea of quality education. And so I've tried to look at some popular definitions that we could define quality as fitness for purpose. Is it really meeting why we have created it? So if, for instance, a university or a private provider goes into an ODL program, the question is going to be, how far is it meeting the needs? If, for instance, students finish from an ODL program and they cannot get jobs, they are seated with the certificate, we could argue that that is not meeting the purpose for that particular program. Effectiveness in meeting institutional goals. No matter the pressure on an institution has obligations. It has needs that must be met. At the same time, we should continually meet customers' stated or implied needs. Customers also have needs. Students that come into our programs, they have needs. The government has expectations of our programs, and all these things must be in alignment. So what did I try to do in 2007 when I conducted a study? I tried to come up with a simple definition of what quality is all about. What is quality? And for me, if you look at this definition, I talk about an institution's goals, because these days we talk about students as customers that must be satisfied. But at the first point of call, we look at the institution and we talk about the process, the input factors, evaluation systems, and to specify needs by their clients. So it's not just a question of the institutional needs. We also talk about the clients of education. And by clients, I'm referring to the government who sponsors education. I'm talking about the students. I'm talking about the financiers. I'm talking about employers of labor. So these two, the institution, the clients, they must come together to meet a particular need. So, in other words, every private, public practitioner of ODL can come up with a working definition that will suit what we really want to achieve. I got this from another set of scholars where they talk about ensuring quality. So what I'm saying this morning is, it is good to talk about quality assurance, quality, but the question is going to be, how do we ensure quality? quality. There is the need to ensure quality. Quality is not quality when we just leave it on paper, because that is what many institutions do. I've come across institutions that will tell you, this is our vision, this is our mission, and all those things are just on paper. In ODL, we cannot afford to go that route. There is the need to ensure quality. And if we look at these combined definitions, we can see that we talk about policies, about attitudes, actions, procedures, a system, attention that will help us to ensure the quality of our teaching, the scholarship, and education. Now, when we talk about quality assurance of ODL programs, there is the need for regulation of both public and private institutions. And I think that is where a body like INED comes in. For instance, in Africa, in the whole of Africa, Mozambique places second in Africa when it comes to private education provider. And the question is going to be, who monitors the quality of what we are providing? So quality assurance becomes very important. We need regulation. We need regulation. I want to believe that INED in Mozambique is not a watchdog that terrorizes customers, but it is out to help customers to attain the best in education, especially through open distance learning. There is the need for policies. In many places where ODL is practiced, there are no policies in place. And may I tell us this? If there is no policy, there is no way to ensure quality assurance. We need policies. We need institutional policies. We need national policies. In South Africa, I know South Africa, we are busy. The government is busy with coming up with the national policy. And the document has already been circulated, which the government is busy with. We need national policy. If we have a national policy in place, it goes on to show the seriousness of the government about ODL, that the government is not just paying lip service to distance education, but the government is serious about it. So if we don't have something like that already in Mozambique, please, there is the need to develop that. There is also the need to develop institutional policy for ODL. So institutions that are represented here, who are involved in ODL, the question is going to be, what policies do we have in place to run our distance education program? If you have a policy in place, it goes a long way to guide our practices, which is very, very important. I have put here some helpful materials, which are guides. Thank God for internet these days. We have access to much information. These are some of the materials that we have used at the University of Pretoria to develop our own policy. And there is there also NADEOSA quality criteria agreed upon by the providers in South Africa. I'm going to show what NADEOSA quality criteria, what does it involve? This is what it involves. It has about 13 criteria that talks about what are the things that we need to pay attention to when we talk about developing ODL quality criteria. And it ranges from policy and planning to learners, program development, course design, course materials, assessment, learner support, human resource strategy, management and administration, collaborative relationships, quality assurance, information and marketing, and results. We don't have the time to go through, to expose this in details. But what I've done is just to take a look at criterion 11, which is on quality assurance. If you look at that criterion, it encompasses every practice, day-to-day practice of ODL program in an institution. We talk about alignment of daily activities. When we talk about daily activities, if for instance, I am an applicant coming to your university for the first time to register or to even get the form for an ODL program, do we know that our quality starts even with the attitude of the administrative staff? So when we talk about quality assurance, I'm not just talking about the results that our students produce. I mean every day, the daily activities. How do we train our admin staff, for instance, even to the gatesmen? Because all those things will determine the quality that we're talking about. We talk about alignment of internal and external quality assurance processes. We talk about clear cycle of structures and procedures. What are the structures that we have put in place? We talk about setting priorities based on benchmarking. We benchmark what we do against what takes place in another place. We look at processes and ongoing efforts to improve quality. We look at staff development. How much have we developed our staff? For instance, these days people talk about ICTs. But we are seated with members of staff at the university who are not interested in ICT. So the question is going to be, what efforts are we making to develop our members of staff, academic staff, for instance? We look at involvement of staff, students, and other clients in quality assurance process. I was happy when Mr. Frank was talking about how INED tries to involve students in quality assurance. What are students saying about the services that we render to them, which should include the admin staff and every other process that we have in place. Telephone services, they should be able to tell us about those things. How do they see the learning materials? Are they friendly? Are they user friendly? And all the rest. And we'll talk about clear routines of staff being familiar. How much do our members of staff know about our quality assurance processes? If you get to an institution, you could just find out by trying to interview a member of staff, and you will discover that many of them are blank when it comes to quality assurance processes. We need to educate our people with regard to that. Now, the previous slide has shown what I would call a total quality management approach, because it involves every area of quality assurance. Now, you may be asking the question, because I said the other time that one of the challenges that ODL is facing is that people they don't have good impression about our programs. But the Open University of UK has proved us wrong, because amongst 5 universities, it has been ranked number 5. And this number 5 places it ahead of Oxford University. So if Open University could be ranked number 5 amongst 100 universities and even ahead of Oxford University, ODL practitioners have no excuse not to provide quality. And I will show us another regional example. Now, I brought something from my university because I work in the unit for distance education. And this was a study that we conducted in 2011. And it's not just even my study. You could see the source. The source there is by the Council of Higher Education in 2010. So it's not a university source. It is a source from outside. If you look at our attrition rates, contact education program is 20%. The dropout rate. Whereas in our distance education program, we have 3.4%. Which means that if you compare these attrition rates, distance education programs are doing better than contact education programs. So, what are we trying to say in that place? Maybe I should go back to this slide. What are we trying to say here? If we pay attention, what I'm saying this morning is that if we pay attention to quality assurance, it is possible to have good attrition rates in distance education. It is possible. And to achieve that, we need to see quality assurance as a cyclical process. In other words, it's not just something that we do once off. It has to be part and parcel of our system. We talk about the purpose. We need to have a goal. What do we want to achieve? Number 2, we talk about the goals informing practice. We talk about the impact, the need to examine impact, and that is where research comes in. And when we talk about research occupies a very vital role in open distance learning. There is no way we we can manage better if we don't measure what we do. What my unit has done at the University of Pretoria is to create a research unit in that unit for distance education. So what is the work of the researcher? The work of the researcher is to examine the system. For instance, if students are going out on contact sessions, we'll be having one on this Saturday. When students are going out, we make sure that at every time we give students what we call evaluation forms. And we try to ask them for feedback about their experiences. Now, if they give us feedback, the forms are brought back to the office. The forms don't just lie on my table. Somebody needs to look into the forms, into what the students are saying, evaluate those things. After evaluation, we sit at a round table and we implement those that are implementable. And because of the nature of distance education, sometimes, because we run a cycle, sometimes the changes that have been recommended may not happen immediately. It may go to the next cycle. But the truth is, we pay attention to those things that have been raised. We monitor what we try to do, we plan and we carry out what we have decided, and the cycle goes back again. So there is no break in between the cycle. So what am I saying to everybody in the house today? There is the need to have a new mindset. Open distance learning can work, but it depends on providers, whether public or private. It can work, it depends on us. So what I'm advising is that quality becomes a priority. It should become a priority to us if we want to be taken seriously. Again, its management we should see as something that we can improve on every time. Nothing should be cast in stone. We should be able to change. If something is not working, let's admit it's not working, let's drop it and let's try something else. Again, we're saying that it should be part of our philosophy. It should be part of our managerial system. It should be part of our teaching, and it should be part of our administrative style. The next thing there is that all ODL programs must meet the same quality standards required of contact education programs if we want to be taken seriously. In conclusion, expanding access should not be at the expense of quality. Quality assurance is possible. And may I share this with us? If we don't pay attention to quality, because I've heard the Deputy Minister talking about, I could see a passion for open distance learning. But the truth, man, is that if we don't pay attention to quality, it will be a waste of effort, a waste of funds. Why do I say that? If you train, and it is in literature, if a student drops out of the system, the government has wasted money on that student. So it becomes important that we should look into quality of what we provide. What student support do we have in place? How much are we supporting academic staff? What about the library facilities? What about ICTs? And may I say this about ICTs? When we want to adopt ICT, because I know it is all over the place now, ICTs are very good. But we need to bring in common sense approach in adopting ICT. There is no point adopting an ICT that is not relevant to our context, no matter how good it sounds. We need to provide ICTs that are relevant to the context of the students. Students can align themselves with it. If not, it will be a wasted effort. All over Africa, we have the developed countries coming to our aid to help with regard to ICTs. And you will discover that after they have gone, because people have not been trained to use those ICTs, they become elephant projects that bring us all over the place. That should not be the case in Mozambique. Expansion is possible, access is possible through ODL, but quality assurance becomes very, very important. Thank you very much.